Anyways, what I'm going to teach you right now extremely quick is asymmetrical design versus symmetrical design. So right now what I'm going to do is asymmetrical design. This is an asymmetrical design. So it's something that's not balanced. When you look at it, you're going to notice there's a lot more weight, visual weight on one side versus the other. Now you guys can do that throughout shapes like I just showed you right this second. Or you guys can do this with colors and so many ways to do this. And you guys will notice that throughout design. Usually if you go for the asymmetrical design, it's a little bit harder to get it to look good. So not that many people go for it, but it's actually more intriguing and usually the viewer will like it more. Now the safe way would be symmetrical design. And this is an example of symmetrical design. So you will notice that this design, it's balanced. It's fully balanced. A lot of design out there is symmetrical design. That's because it's the easiest way to go and the safe way to go because you know it's gonna work. Whereas asymmetrical design, it might not always work. Now there are reasons why you guys will go into symmetrical design and asymmetrical design. For example, if you're working for a bank, you might go into the symmetrical design just because it's a lot more serious and obviously a lot more balanced. Whereas asymmetrical design, you might want to use that if you're designing, for example, a poster for a concert. So it does all depend what message you're trying to give out. But again, like I mentioned before, this can be accomplished throughout color and the use of elements throughout your design. Now I was gonna go into golden ratio because if you look into it, this can be applied to almost everything and it's something really cool to look at. However, we won't look too much into it during this course. Alright, so we're just gonna skip all the way to the rule of thirds. And that's something that you will see a lot in photography, but you can also apply that in design. So basically you would take up your designer photograph and you would point whatever point of interest in these intersections. So you would just bring it into 3 points. So again, you would just divide things into 3 equal parts. So we just divided this into 3, horizontal and vertical. And my point of interest would be here, for example, or here, or here, or here. So in this image, we have the kitten placed about that area. And we can do the same thing with any design that we do. We can place whatever is our point of interest right in those intersections. So if this was strictly just design, we would place our element right here. So it'd be our point of focus. Whatever's our point of focus, we place it there, or here, or here, or here. That would just make your image work better. Of course, all these rules that I'm showing you, they can be broken anytime and at any point. But if you want to make sure that your design works, usually following these simple design rules will help you out. So again, there could be lots of elements within your design. However, if you want your main focus to be somewhere, you should think about where to place it, and using this rule of thirds should help out. Now let's talk about raster image or pixel image versus a vector image. So vector is something that you could create in Illustrator, for example, and you would do that during shapes. So using shapes, we could create this, for example. And that's something that we can zoom in and we can make it as big as we want and it's never gonna get pixelated. So you guys can see I can zoom in as much as I want. So let's zoom in here, for example. I'm never gonna see a pixel. And you can make a vector file as big as you want or as small as you want. You're not gonna see any pixels. You're just gonna see the shapes that you created. So that's versus right here, a pixelated image. So this would be like a photograph, for example. And if you zoom in on it, there will be a point that you start seeing pixels. So you guys see those squares? Those are the pixels. The higher the res of the picture, the more you can zoom in and the bigger that you can make it. But at some point, you guys can go see these squares, which are the pixels. So you can almost go really big with this one, but not that huge. So again, that's what happens with a raster or pixel image. You will see the pixels. So they can only go so big. You can only blow them up to a certain point. Whereas a vector image, again, doesn't matter how much we zoom in, how big we make it, we're never gonna see any pixels. So I'm going full on zoom, nothing's gonna happen because it is a vector image. So that's the difference between the two. And for example, in Photoshop is where you would create images that are pixel or raster images. Whereas Illustrator, you use Illustrator to make vector images. Obviously, there's ways to make that work the opposite way. You could make vector images in Photoshop, and in Illustrator you could end up with a raster image just because you export it as a JPEG, for example. But on our next episode, we're going to talk more about file formats. Now let's talk about directing your viewer throughout your design. This is something that a lot of people forget about. We are advertising anything really. In this case, I'm just going to put tech and design, this channel, and then productions. So if we place our element, this could just be any element, doesn't have to be a person. You notice that he's pointing this way, he's walking this way. So our viewer's attention is gonna go this way, and they're gonna take a look at this as our main element, whereas they're not really gonna pay attention to this guy. Although it's more interesting to look at him, it's more complex than just words. But at the end of the day, your eyes are gonna go right into here because he's looking at this. So we are looking this way, to the right. But for example, if you have a photograph as part of your design poster, and it's looking this way to the right, and you have your wording here, it'll get kind of confusing of where to look. And actually, you could be directing your viewer to just not look at anywhere and just get out of your poster right away because of the way that you're directing with your elements. And for example, in this case, it's not just the bird itself, but even if you look at the lines of the plants, they're also going to the right. So it's directing your eyes to the right. So generally speaking, you don't want your viewer to get out of your poster. You want them to stay in your poster and focus on where you want them to go at. So you would be placing your words here, for example. However, I would never use an image like so here to this side, because I'm always gonna know that it's directing my viewers out of my poster right away. There's too much empty space on the left. It just wouldn't work. But for example, if I was using this image, it could technically work out because we have the spider. And if you guys look at the lines, they're moving this way. It's kind of directing your eyes towards the main thing that we want them to look at, which is our title right here. And if we add more text or anything, we would place this up here, for example. So again, the text would look something like so, because all these lines are pointing upwards, and your eyes would actually keep on the text in this case. So this actually would work out. But anyways, as mentioned, you always want to direct your viewer to stay within your poster, within your design. That's why you have to think about where things are pointing at, where your lines are pointing at, and what message you're trying to convey during your design. So always look at all the elements within your design, your photograph that you're using for the background, everything, so you know where to place things within it. But anyways, that would be it for this quick introduction into graphic design. And as mentioned, we will be showing you how to use Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, plus a few others, because as a graphic designer, you have to know how to use almost all the Adobe software. And we will even touch base on how to make marketing plans. But as far as this video goes, we're all done. If you guys have any comments, questions, you guys can write down here in the comments area. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you.